It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Patrick Smith, and we're here to bring you all the latest on Liverpool FC. Now, I'm sure we all woke up this morning expecting to once again use this half an hour as a form of therapy of sorts to rant about how terrible Liverpool were once again at the weekend. But instead, we'll actually be starting off this podcast with some even bigger news after it was announced Manchester City have been charged by the Premier League with numerous breaches of financial rules following a 4-year investigation. Well, joining me to talk through all of this are three of the finest brains Echo Towers could offer. Up first, as ever, we are joined by Chief LFC writer Ian Doyle. Hello, Doyle.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. We've also got Echo LFC correspondent Paul Gorst. Gorsty, I'm sure, much like Doyle, you're glad to see the back of the M6 for the time being.
For now, yeah. I'm sure we'll be back at Brighton for some reason in a few weeks.
Yeah, another clash with Brighton or Wolves is going to happen somehow, somewhere. Anyway, rounding off today's panel, we've got football journalist David Lynch as well. Welcome along, Lynchy.
Hi, lads. Except not you, Ian.
Well, don't worry, listeners. We'll move on to our latest Liverpool therapy session, as I mentioned, later on in the show. There's plenty to mull over after that weekend drubbing at Molineux. But as mentioned, we'll start off with the Man City financial breaches. I'm just going to read out for those of you who aren't aware or haven't heard the statement from the Premier League reads, in accordance with Premier League Rule W.821, the Premier League confirms that it has today referred a number of alleged breaches of the Premier League rules by Manchester City Football Club to a commission under Premier League rules for W.34. So basically, it then goes into detail explaining which rules they've broken, but effectively, City have been hit with over 100 different charges over 14 seasons. Doyle, I'm going to swing to you because you can probably elaborate on that much better than I can. But what do you make of it all?
I mean, is anybody surprised? I'll ask everybody, is anybody surprised that this has happened? Lynch, are you surprised? It's a podcast, Lynch, you're going to have to go on and say...
I have to watch your video to see me shaking my head.
So that's a no from everybody. Nobody's surprised. It's been a bit of an open secret, hasn't it, around football that something... Well, actually, it doesn't have to even be an open secret. They've been under investigation for 4 years. So, so everybody knew that something like this could come and happen. I don't think anybody was quite surprised with the amount of charges that have been brought against City. But I think a lot of them are down to do with the individual rulings of the Premier League, the Premier League handbook or the rules that they have. So when it comes to accounting, and I think a lot of people didn't realise there were so many sub-rules to a certain thing. So, ultimately, it looks... The accusation is that City have been cooking the books somewhat to help them out with FFP, and then the latter charges that they've not assisted with the investigation from the moment it started in terms of their accounts from them, which was December 2018. So I'm sure Liverpool fans are looking at it and they're thinking, yes, well, they'll get charged and then they'll get relegated and all the things will be taken off them points. But I think we talked about it just before we came here, started recording this, that it's taken 4 years just for the investigation to say there are some charges that are worth answering. It'll take about years and years and years and years and years before this gets sorted. I'd imagine most of the players who were involved in those title challenges that, obviously a lot of the ones in 2014 have retired already. One's looking at, 2019 and 2022 last year. They could have retired as well by then. So, it's interesting in the sense that obviously something must be slightly different at City in terms of the way that they're doing things, because obviously why would the Premier League be doing this? And I suspect Chelsea are looking at it thinking, we might just have to we might just have a double check at what we've been doing over the last couple of months. No suggestion of anything illegal there with Chelsea, but that but with City in terms of affecting Liverpool, you're looking at what can happen. I think people have to forget about what happened in the past now. It's what can happen now. And does it mean that they get do they become a little less attractive to players if they want to join them? I'm not sure. No one knows exactly when they're going to come up with some kind of ruling on this. So I just think it'll be business as usual for City. They'll still, be creating the greatest revenue in the world somehow with the commercial department, somehow with all these sponsorship deals, somehow. Some of these companies even exist. So, but don't want to be put a downer on. I know a lot of Liverpool fans have got excited about this. Say, yeah, we knew this was going to happen. Says, yeah, well, great, but what's happening now? I can't see anything happening for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. What is the extent of the punishment going to be? I mean, I'm sure we've all seen so many tweets this morning suggesting, from the not very extreme to the very extreme circumstances for City. I mean, Gorsty, what's your take on it all? I mean, there's some big punishments on offer potentially, but I think Dawley's right in the sense that it could be, a decade before these are in place.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of punishments, we'd only be speculating, wouldn't we? Because with it being Manchester City for the start, it's not something that we've covered particularly extensively, is it? We've obviously just kind of taken it from a Liverpool angle and how, kind of affects Liverpool in terms of them being rivals on the pitch. Not so much this season, but certainly over the recent years. So you can only really speculate about punishments. I think, if you did do retrospective points deductions, and it turns out Liverpool have suddenly got 3 Premier League titles on top of the ones that they've already got. Is that something to celebrate? I think probably not. I think it just make a lot of fans feel hollow and cold inside, really. I think, if you're talking about punishments, they can't really come up with a financial one for Manchester City because it's pretty much futile, isn't it, given that the money that the City have. Any kind of fine wouldn't have to be paid in accordance with financial fair play or anything like that because there's nothing to do with transfers or anything, is it? So, they could name the price and City would pay it in a heartbeat and move on. So it'd have to be sporting sanctions. Now, ultimately, that essentially, would have to be points deduction, you'd imagine, for, future seasons. Well, I agree with Doyle. I think it will take a while before we get to the bottom of what any punishment may or may not be. So maybe it's a case of starting one particular Premier League season, 10 points, minus 10 points or whatever. Certainly don't see a prospect where they decide to take off points for, certain seasons that they were guilty of being improper with the finances, shall we say. But like Doyle says, it's been a bit of an open secret. Me and him have both spoken to people at Liverpool who've privately, kind of admitted that this has been going on and everyone's been fully aware of how it all operates. So I suppose it's a good development today that the Premier League are looking to finally crack down on it. They've certainly taken the time over it. No one can accuse them of jumping into anything, too quickly. It's taken 4 years for this to come to fruition, and now it's moved on to a kind of special commission, and then I'm sure that'll take its time as well. So we'll wait and see, and then we'll await the punishment or potential punishments with great interest. But yeah, it's just I suppose the only thing you can say is it's kind of another destabilising thing for City to worry about this season, isn't it? I think they're suffering a few similar problems to Liverpool, albeit not on as great a scale. They look like they need to refresh and rebuild a little bit here and there. Liverpool's job on that score is massive, isn't it? But they're 5 points behind Arsenal. Arsenal have got a game in hand, and they've just lost their 4th game of the season. So there are some issues there to look at on the face of it, and then obviously with this chundering on the background, I think there are plenty of things to be worried about at the Etihad at the moment. But Liverpool have got their own house to deal with, and there are more than a few issues there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if only the Liverpool side of last year were playing like that this season, I mean, there'd be a shoe-in for the titles, I'm sure. They're really frustrating. But I mean, Lynch, I'll get your take on this as well. I mean, according to Times journalist Martin Ziegler, at the Premier League rules, City can't appeal this sanction, which, they obviously had the UEFA investigation and charges previously, which they appealed, and the appeal was successful. So we know they can't do that. Do you think anything will actually come of this, or do you think, as Gorst mentioned, they'll get off lightly with a fine? And then also, I mean, Gorst mentioned there, Liverpool potentially could have missed out on 3 titles. I mean, is there any point in having them awarded? Like, do you think it's worth bothering with that in a sense?
Yeah, well, I think the whole situation is just completely depressing for as a starting point. But I think the inability to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport is interesting, because I think that would be one route that where City will go down that route. And I think the whole idea of in situations like this is, the way they've operated legally in the past is we've seen it's just to try and drag it out for as long as possible, fight it as much as you can in the courts and see how, and then if you can push it and try and get off at it. I think the lads have said themselves, and it's sort of been an open secret, and we've got to be very careful with how we word this, because at the moment, obviously, it's just allegations. But I hate the idea that we all have to sit here and be in on the facade that Manchester City should be rightfully top of the Deloitte League at the moment. It's frankly ludicrous. Real Madrid are not just Real Madrid, the biggest club possibly in world football, but they are the Spanish and European champions, and they took less revenue than Manchester City last season. That is just fascinating to me, and when we all got to accept that that's how it is, and you get people pushing back on these charges that have come out today, and I just think the fact that the Court of Arbitration for the Sport option is not there is good in the sense that we will get hopefully, however long this Premier League hearing takes, we will get some sort of final decision on it, and the decision will be made. But I don't expect it to have real teeth either, which is unfortunate. And I think, given the sheer amount of charges there, which suggests that City probably won't be able to bat them all away, and maybe some of them will go through. But the sheer amount there, obviously, and allied to the financials that we keep seeing year on year, suggests that something's not quite right. And if that's the case, and City get away with a slap on the wrist or a one-season points deduction in this year, that for me is not really good enough if these charges are proven in any way, because I think, does that not render the last sort of 10 years of football that we've been watching, where Manchester City have been so incredibly dominant? If any of these charges are found to be proven, it's basically all of those seasons have been completely pointless. Everything we've written, I mean, that's mostly pointless anyway, but I mean, everything we've written and said, and every fan experience in that time, it's not just from a Liverpool's perspective in terms of title charges. I'm thinking Watford getting to the FA Cup final and being beaten by Manchester City, Stoke City doing the same, Sunderland were beaten by them in the League Cup final. If any of these charges are proven, and there's been some financial skullduggery going on around those, if the punishment is just a fine or a minor points deduction, or even a one season worth of relegation, which will impact City, but I mean, they'll be straight back up, won't they? And it'll be like nothing ever happened again. If that's the extent of the punishment, then I just don't think that would be enough, to be honest. I think it's like I say, all the football we've watched over the last decade will be massively tainted, and like I say, the charges would have to be proven, and the Premier League would have to really back up the case, which you think, given the amount of time they spent doing it, they will have a strong case to answer. But I think if they do prove that, the punishments has to go much further than that, because we as football fans and football writers and everyone attached to the sport has been robbed if these things get proven, and I just don't think a little slap on the wrist would do it, really.
I don't think they'll all be tainted, because if you're a team that's beaten City at that time, you can go, wow, we beat them, and if it's proven, they were cheated. So, that makes the wins all the better. So it's heartbreaking. I can't just get rid of all of it. I know what you're saying, though. But
it's heartbreaking for Liverpool having that one title that they won against this side. An incredible achievement, if the allegations are proven. But the two that they could have won and would have been in front of fans. I mean, 13-14 in particular would have been, incredible, and Liverpool will never get to look back on that. And, even if it gets awarded retrospectively, it still leave a bitter taste in the mouth. So it's, you almost hope these charges don't get proven, but then it's so that you can sort of just put that to the back of your mind. But then, if there is a case to answer, then you do want to see a full punishment meted out, because that's the only way we can sort of, save football as a whole, really, is by ensuring there are actual adequate punishments for this sort of thing.
So what do you reckon they should do?
Well,
if they are found guilty, what's on the table? If Gorst said there's no fine, basically, fines are pointless. So you're looking at transfer embargoes, but for how long? 4 years, maybe? Something like that. So if you look,
it's not feasible to do that, though, is it? Because
Chelsea had one for 2 years, a year, didn't they?
But 4 years would be, you just wait, players will be retiring, and
they shouldn't have done that with the, you know what I mean? It's like, so that's
academy into action, wasn't it?
They what? Sorry,
they forced their academy into action.
Well, but they've spent a fortune on the academy, haven't they? So
yeah.
It's almost like they've covered all the bases, isn't it?
It would cause problems to the players who were contracted there, though, who want to leave and then probably aren't being allowed to leave, and it's it's not really fair on them to trap them in that situation, is it? And the best punishments in those situations would be retrospectively handing out winners' medals to teams who were narrowly beaten in, say, the Premier League.
That's never going to happen, though. It's never going to happen. I genuinely think that would be pointless. I think Liverpool fans who say, well, we should now be given the league in whatever year, and United fans, because they'd have won 3 as well. I just think it's pointless. It's gone now. Just get on with it. This is protecting. Should this kind of, the fact that they've been charged, as Lynch said so many times, just not going to be able to. It doesn't matter how much they get lawyered up, but we know how aggressive Manchester City can be with these things. Is they're not going to get, excuse me, away with all of them, I suspect. Something will happen. But it's protecting the future clubs and the future teams. And in some cases, probably even protecting Manchester City for themselves further down the line. So it will be interesting to see what happens. But I think anybody who's talking about Liverpool being retrospectively given Premier League titles on this, that and the other, forget it.
Yeah, get an open top bus for the 13-14 side as one tweet I saw suggesting earlier. I mean, I'll keep this open with the sort of open discussion you just had there, because the last point on this is about Pep Guardiola. I mean, he's now with various bookmakers odds on to leave City at the end of the season. He's previously been quoted last year, I'll read out quickly. When they're accused of something, I asked them, obviously talking about the investigations, they explained that I believe them. I said to them, if you lie to me the day after I am not here, I'll be out and I'll not be your friend anymore because he's back in club, etc. Now, I just think there's any chance that Pep will keep after this or at the end of the season, or do you think that's sensitive from this nonsense?
Well, he said it, but obviously City are denying it, so they're not going to go to him. Oh, by the way, we did do it. You know what I mean? If Pep does decide to go at the end of the season, it'll be because he just thinks, you know what, this entire thing has just become a massive hassle. I just want to crack on with, as Ghosty said, rebuilding a team or getting it back up to where it used to be. I just don't want to deal with this. Because it's been, if he walks tomorrow, I don't think City can complain too much. The amount of trophies they've won under him. So I don't really see that being too much of an issue. Do I expect it to walk at the end of the season because of this directly? No. But, I've done cover Man City. Don't know the ins and outs of what's going on there. I don't think none of us do. So, yeah, we're just like watching on from afar and thinking, as you said before, Pat, this is probably not the best season for Liverpool to go rubbish.
Yeah, I think with Guardiola as well, though, is if he wasn't convinced by the weight of evidence that UEFA had against Manchester City and the fact that the only reason they got off with that was because of it was the allegations being time barred. If that wasn't enough to make him walk, then I can't imagine he's going to do it now.
Yeah, I agree. I can't see him kind of sticking to his word there and going. I think he'll have the fact that City will protect their innocence regardless of the amount of charges thrown at them from various governing bodies, and I think he'll just go, oh, well, we're protesting our innocence, so I'm staying. So I don't see that come to fruition. I know the odds have kind of tumbled on him leaving, but I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm saying I think the Klopp Guardiola era is still going to go strong for the next couple of years, but we'll leave this Man City talk there. Obviously, it does affect Liverpool in some way. Everyone, make sure you keep across the Liverpool Echo site. Keep up to date with all the articles covering that. We'll bring you any news as soon as we have it. But let's move on then to a bit of Wolves reaction. Doyle, I'll swing to you. I mean, have you got a little cabin in the stadium at Molineux now? You've been there so many times, but it was a pretty dreadful trip this time compared to the last one, wasn't it, for you?
Well, it was fairly straightforward driving because Gorsty drove us this time, so that was good. His little debut drive there, taking us down to Wolverhampton. I thought he did quite well, so, credit to Paul. Big day. Gorst player rated 8. Son did a good job. Yeah.
It wasn't literally me debut driver. It wasn't him just passing test. It's the first time you've been in the passenger seat, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, the food was good, so that's nice. Was there a game on? I just kind of wiped it from my mind. First 12 minutes, just awful. Just don't understand what was going on. No wonder Jurgen Klopp was saying afterwards, like, we just can't do that. Well, you can, because you did. But, you're not supposed to be doing that. And you do wonder what on earth were they thinking of before the game. It's like, right, let's go out and do this. It's like, even the kickoff, anybody who watches Liverpool regularly, and certainly anybody who follows me on Twitter will know that Liverpool's kickoff, if they're kicking off and they've got the ball, is play the ball back to the centre-back. Then it's it diagonally to the left winger to try and compete for a header. Then they either get the ball back, goes out for a throw-in, or the other defence gets it and both teams reset. Well, it came to Massive from the kickoff, and he attempted it, and he's like a daisy cutter. It's like he just went straight into midfield. It's like from that moment on, it was like, well, this isn't going so well. So, within a couple of minutes, Matip had scored in the wrong net, which is, it was a bit unfortunate for him in that sense. But if you watch the replay, it's him that's let, Wang go. So, and then he's kind of dithered a little bit when he's trying to get back. And then the second goal was just, well, that was just so many things wrong with it. A total lack of communication. And, Craig Dawson, who, when he scored, I realised he was actually playing for Wolves. Didn't realise he'd joined them. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. And yeah, Klopp was right. He said second half, even the Wolves manager, Pettigrew, said that Liverpool deserved probably something a bit more from the second half performance. But 3-0. Couldn't really complain too much about it, could you? You know, no one's saying that Liverpool should have got any that game. And while it wasn't as bad as Brighton in terms of the overall performance, in terms of the results, the one thing about, I mean, I got in a bit of an argument with a couple of Wolves fans on Twitter, obviously. They never do, to my face. Basically, I said the Wolves just weren't very good. And I still don't think they are. They were in the relegation zone before the game. There's a reason why they're there. I don't think they'll go down because the 3 teams worse than them, but they're not a Wolves team that's as good as last year or a couple of years before that. So for Liverpool to go there, and a team who in 10 Premier League games at home this season had scored only 6, and they got a further 50% on top of that in 90 minutes against Liverpool. That shows you how bad defensively they've become. So there's no Van Dijk, no Canati. I know we can discuss things later on in the week in terms of why they line up against Everton, but would anybody be surprised if Nat Phillips gets a game? No one could argue with it, could they? So, that's how things are for Liverpool at the moment, and it's difficult to pick out any positives, but as I say, Ghosty did well on the drive and the field was nice.
Yeah, strong rating of 8 for Gorst on the drive. That's probably the only important thing to take from the day, to be honest. But I mean, Gorst, I'll come to you on this, because as Doyle says, Wolves have never, and especially this season, are not a side who score goals. I mean, 6 all season at home, scoring 3. While Liverpool's overall performance was maybe better than Brighton, I mean, defensively, I think it's the worst we've seen this season by some stretch. But these dreadful starts, I mean, every game within the first 5 minutes, Liverpool look almost dead on to concede. Why do you think that keeps happening?
I don't know. And greater football minds than mine that keep getting that question put to them. And Jurgen Klopp says he can't answer it either, to be fair. But Doyley's right, that kind of waist-high clearance from Matip 3 seconds into the game kind of set the stall out. And before Wolves scored, I think they'd already had 3 shots. I can certainly think of 2. Sarabia had one just wide inside the box. And there was one from distance, possibly Neves, that Alisson palmed away, and maybe another one. And then, you're there 2 minutes into the game, and Liverpool have already started really poorly. Wolves on the front foot, and you kind of expecting the worst, and so it transpired. I thought Joel Matip was horrendous on the day, one of the worst I've ever seen him perform. And I don't like kind of digging out individuals when it's such a terrible collective effort, but he really was kind of, bottom of a really bad bunch on the day. Just, for the opening goal, he kind of starts to run towards Chan, Hwang, was it? And then delays it, and then tries to get there again, and because he hasn't covered that ground, because he stopped, it hits him and goes in off the back post for an own goal. And Craig Dawson on his debuts and had to smash one in with about 5 Liverpool players in the box, and then by then the game's already over with. Liverpool 2-0 down after 12 minutes, and you're thinking that they're so kind of bereft of confidence and not clicking as an attacking force in the final third. You never had any confidence that Liverpool were never going to get back into it. Did okay in the second half to an extent for 20-25 minutes, but were undone far too easily again with Traore's pace on the counter and then Neves finishing off the attack. And to concede 3 goals to Wolves, who, as you say, they have been really shot shy all season, it sums up where the problems are. And let's face it, if you would have said a full time that one of those teams started the day in the relegation zone, you definitely wouldn't have said Wolves. It was just one of those days, and because Liverpool conceded 9 in the last 3 away games, they desperately need Virgil van Dijk back as soon as possible, and Canate to go with him. And then it's something to build on, isn't it? Then maybe you can start looking a little bit further forward, and maybe the midfield you get a little bit of stability in there. Jota, Diaz, maybe they're on the way back, but at the moment you struggle to see how Liverpool are going to get out of this. They don't look like scoring a goal, then winning the game. And I wrote in the match verdict after the game that this is now the end of that once great Liverpool team that we all saw between 2018 and 2022. And it's going to have to be a significant rebuild. It's going to need significant investments, and Klopp is the right man to do that, but he's going to need huge backing, whenever the ownership situation looks like in the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, much like yourself, Gorsty, I really hate to blame individual players, but I mean, that Liverpool back four defended as individuals at the weekend, and individually they all defended terribly. I mean, there's no unity, there's no synchronisation between the back four that's so important that we've become so used to on the Liverpool side. I mean, Van Dijk's obviously going to be a huge return as he expected to return to full contact first team training this week. I mean, Lynch, what's your take on this there? Because there's been so much talk about this midfield rebuild that Liverpool need in the summer. But do you think the defence could actually be the more important rebuild on recent showing?
Yeah, I think you've got to be worried about some of those performances and the fact that there's such a huge drop-off in... I mean, they haven't been very good with Van Dijk in the team this season, but there is a further drop-off when you take him out of there just because there is nobody else there who seemingly wants to be the leader in the back four, and that causes issues in itself. I do think you solve a lot of these problems if your protection in front is a lot better. And I don't want to just put everything on the midfield, and there are issues across the Liverpool team as a whole. Still big goal shy themselves at the minute, which is also an issue. But I do think if you sort the midfield out, it does bring back some balance on either side of the ball, and Liverpool are really suffering in terms of that, because I think any back four they put out just seems to be exposed at the moment, and that's causing real issues and making everyone look terrible, really. And you just hope that that's something that can be sort of, you can drag that back a little bit if they do add in midfield in the summer. But I think a centre half is maybe something they should be looking at possibly. I thought the Gomez contract over the summer was an interesting one. There was interest from elsewhere, but Liverpool were adamant they wanted him to stay and tied him down. Whereas you wonder whether that was one they might have wanted to look at. Would he be better served going elsewhere? Joel Matip, he's coming to the point in his career where maybe he's going to start showing some element of decline. He's been massive for Liverpool. He has had his injury problems, but he's been a big player for them down the years. So, maybe that's something they look at. But I think a lot of it's dependent on whether they get interest in who they've got from outside. They'd have to move someone on, wouldn't they, to do anything at centre half? And you aren't hearing any rumours at the moment of anyone in for Matip or Gomez. So, maybe that's one they look at. But like I say, I think things would look a lot better if that back four was being protected better as a starting point, and then you could maybe more fairly judge what the centre halves are doing. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, really, really interested. I mean, Doyle, we've spoken about the terrible midfield so many times. We've touched today on how bad the defence has been, but an attack as well. I mean, it's a goal. We haven't scored a goal against one of the sides in the bottom three at the time of the match. I mean, do you think it's the right thing playing Nunes on the left and Gakpo down the middle? I mean, because Liverpool didn't really ever look like scoring, did they?
Well, you played Nunes down the centre and Gakpo on the left against Wolves, so that didn't make much difference, did it? I don't know. Nunes, I think, is someone they have to build the team around now. They spent £85 million on him, so they probably just need to start looking at what's best to get. It was interesting, didn't it? Too, they did last week where he was talking about, actually, I knew the Premier League would be different, and I think it was Otamendi. He said to him, quite hard, and it's quite fast, strong, good teams. And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah. But it's only when he actually got here that he actually realised just how difficult it was. And I think he's only started half of the game, 16 out of 32, I think it is. So, yeah, at least somebody they have to persist with. The interesting questions on Salah. He's not, we all think he's great, but, even great players can have a bit of a dip, and the rest of the players around him aren't really helping him. I mean, I tell you, didn't help him at the weekend. The referee didn't help him either. I just thought he kept, this has been a long, issue of contention, certainly with Salah, is that he doesn't get enough protection from the referees, and I just thought he kept on getting pushed over. You could account, some people are now saying that, it shows that he's not trying. It's like, well, I'll tell you right now, if any of those players are not trying, they're getting subbed straight away. There's no way that Klopp or any other manager would put up with that. I think sometimes players don't try 100%, but it's not as if they don't try. And sometimes they try more than average because they've got great enthusiasm for what's going on. And who could blame any Liverpool player for not being particularly enthusiastic with the way things are at the moment? Certainly that no one can. They haven't really got any confidence, apart from, Vazketic is probably only one of them that does, and that's because he's probably thinking, well, if you'd asked me this time last year what I'd be doing, I didn't expect to be playing a couple of games of the Premier League, starting games for Liverpool. So, for him, it's all, brave new world and all that. But, yeah, I think Salah might benefit from being taken out of the team, if only because, I know we mentioned this last week, if only because just give him a bit of a rest, to be honest. A rest from the scrutiny that he's under. The Liverpool got enough other forwards that can play there at the moment. Harvey Elliott, I thought, can count himself a bit unlucky that he didn't play at Wolves when you consider what he did last time, and that, he did a job the last couple of games on the left wing where he's not really that. That's not his position he's accustomed to. But he scored, didn't he, against Brian last week? So, it's like, hang on, but why am I not playing? So, yeah, I do think, I wrote in my piece after the game that you're just worried a little bit that whether the players, not so much not listening to Klopp and the coaching team, but it's not probably being put across in the way that's getting the best out of all of them, which isn't a criticism you said very often for Klopp and whoever he's had on his coaching team, whether it's Buvac or Linders or whoever. And yeah, whatever Liverpool are doing, and they keep on, as Gorst wrote this piece the other week, that Klopp's always complained about, I'm not any time on the training ground. Well, they're not playing any midweek games at the moment. And they've got loads of time on the training ground. Some are getting worse. Certain games.
Weeks on it, haven't they?
Yeah, so I'm not. It's hard to put your finger on it. It's not just one thing, it's lots of things that we've said all the way through this podcast for weeks. But I don't think it's quite as bad as it's possibly being made out, in the sense that suddenly you can get half of the players back, and they will come back. These players are not going to retire just because they've got injured. Well, maybe Arthur Mello might, but you never know. But these players are going to come back. Some of them are going to play. They had 3 players starting against Wolves who, at the start of the season, never played in the Premier League before. In Núñez, Gakpo, and Bajcetic. Now, that's not unusual in the sense that you'll have teams who bring in loads of players, and then they'll come in from abroad. Say Man City, players like that, they'll sign players. But Liverpool, historically under Klopp, have made a big play of signing players who played in the Premier League, which means they can come in straight away. Look at Wijnaldum, look at Mane, look at Van Dijk, Salah. He's another one. But in the last couple of years, they've not really been able to do that. So I think that's another thing that has to be taken into consideration. It's people getting used to the league as well as the team. We know that Liverpool do things in a very specific way under Klopp, and some players have found that a little bit more difficult than others. So, yeah. What was the question?
I think
Not scoring enough goals, Andy. Not scoring enough goals, and that's partly, as Lynch said, the midfield seems to now. It's caught between two stools, isn't it? Do they want to make it more solid for the defence, or do they want to improve the attack? And they can't seem to know which one to do. Against Wolves in the FA Cup, they clearly made the decision we're going to stay back a bit, and they won. And they thought, we can't really do that again, or we've got a little bit more confidence, we'll go for it. And they never gave themselves a chance because they were 2-0 down after 12 minutes anyway, so we won't know how that would have panned out. So, yeah, difficult time, but as I said just then, probably not as bad as people are making out. Although that doesn't mean it's good, before anybody quotes me on it. It's still bad, but it's not like, the world's ending kind of thing. It's just what happens. Football teams, when they're in transition, and Klopp said last May it's going to be a transformation this season. Things need to change. You can't do it overnight, especially when you don't have the kind of money that some teams who may have been charged by the Premier League 100 times today have got.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I thought Lynch was going to dive in with a point. But
yeah, no, to be honest, I was just thinking about the problems the attack is having at the moment as well. Is sort of, it's much worse than we think. I don't want to say that, but it's kind of one thing that's slightly worrying about it is that Liverpool obviously they forewent the opportunity to bring in midfielders in the summer, but have actually signed quite a lot of attackers of late. And you think of Núñez, Gakpo, Carvalho all came in the summer. And none of them really have had an impact, which is something we're not used to at Liverpool at all in terms of signings. Have tended in recent years to hit the ground running. So this is for all 3 of those to not really have made a massive impact so far is a little bit concerning, I think. And it just suggests to me that, again, if you had that solid base in midfield that was providing the platform for both the defence to look better and the attack to look better, that all these problems wouldn't be coming together. Hopefully it is as simple as that, and it is just that, big change needed in that part of the pitch, and then everything else will start to look better for going forward. But it is just a bit of a worry, like I say, that those 3 signings haven't really hit the ground running, and that we'll wait for this steady sort of adaptation, because that's just not really something that Liverpool signings have in general had to do.
Yeah, I mean, Gorsty, just to round up the pod, what's your take on the situation in attack? And are you anticipating the return of Diogo Jota like I am, because he's expected to be back in training this week, isn't he?
Yeah, it's vitally important, isn't it? We've seen Cody Gakpo 6 games now, and I'm still struggling to really see what he's all about, if we're being perfectly honest. Obviously not all down to him. He's coming to a team that's massively struggling for confidence, and his injury hits in the midfield needs a kind of complete overhaul, and defenders are out of form and whatever else. But you're still waiting for something, aren't you? And we haven't really seen that in the half a dozen games that he's played this season. He must only think there's about 3 teams in England, because he's either playing Brighton or Wolves. But Yeah, Jota back in training will be massive. I asked Klopp about Jota a couple of weeks ago, and he said he should be fine for the Real Madrid game, which I think is a massive boost. One of my concerns is he won't hit the ground running because, let's face it, he's pretty much been injured all season, hasn't he? He's only made a handful of appearances. He came back in early September and he got injured in mid-October. So, we haven't seen Diogo Jota at his best for around about 12 months now. I think his last goal was against City in the 2-2 draw in April. So Liverpool need him to just instantly be back at those levels, and it's probably a bit much of an ask for him, to be perfectly honest. Same as Diaz, he's obviously been injured since early October, that game in Arsenal. So when he does come back, whether it's March time, that's a fair old time on the shelf, isn't it? So I think this kind of instant fix of players coming back from injuries and Liverpool suddenly kind of shoots up the table is a bit unfair on those coming back from injury, and a bit unrealistic, to be honest, without sounding too downbeat. I do genuinely now just think this is going to be one of those seasons where Liverpool are just going to have to tough it out, accept a few lean months, get to the summer, and then hopefully they can look at a long-term, significant restructuring of the playing squad and a bit of a rebuild and go from there. I don't think this, I don't think Liverpool are kind of done for now as a top-level team. I just think it's a really struggling season, and with the right work in the summer, they can get back to those levels, but I certainly don't think they're going to get anywhere near those levels between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the issues of coming back from long-term injuries are going to be bad enough anyway, let alone coming back into that Liverpool team. It's going to be so hard for them to hit the levels and hit the ground running, as they say. And hopefully that rebuild can happen in the summer. David Lynch there saying in our private chat, Bellingham in full capitals. Everyone's screaming it, and it's full. That's sexy, isn't it?
Thanks, Pat.
Anyway,
well done, Patrick. Now, please continue.
Yeah. As ever, Doyle, we'll wrap the pod up there before I say anything that annoys any more of our co-journalists. So thank you very much for listening and watching along. Everyone will be back again with the Blood Red podcast on Friday. But until then, it's goodbye for now.